from the Press of Atlantic City. Mike, my first question to you, obviously we'll get into some of the highlight moments for some of these teams, but did it almost feel like the rug was pulled out from under us there on state championship weekend? No state champions from South Jersey.
Well, yeah, I mean, you say that, like you said, I think it was 1971 where the last time no boy or girl team from South Jersey won a state title, and in 1991, I think it was the last time a boy team didn't win it, and you kind of look at it, and it does kind of leave a bit of a sour taste. You're used to seeing at least one South Jersey team involved in that tournament of champions, and as a reporter, you don't even have to worry about it this week. So it is a little bit of disappointing. Maybe it's a momentary lull. You had some teams have excellent seasons. You had a lot of teams get to state finals, just could not get over the top. And in a lot of cases, a lot of teams, St. Augustine, Camden, the Ocean City girls, kind of lose that game in frustrating fashion.
Yeah, let's start with St. Augustine. I know you were there a week ago, last Saturday night in Toms River, and it was about to be a miserable ending to that year. What an outstanding year for the Hermits, and they certainly had high expectations. And then they basically, to be frank, just got the doors blown off there in the first half against Don Bosco. And we talked to head coach Paul Rodeo earlier, and he sort of echoed this as well. Even in the loss, I mean, I think you remember that game. You put that game up there with some of the great performances from any St. Augustine team over the years, what the Hermits were able to do there in the second half, especially Austin Kennedy. How impressed were you, having watched this team a number of times this year in the comeback? It fell a little bit short, but that was some entertaining basketball.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Austin Kennedy, obviously, with 22 points, all 22 points in the second half, and he sees that three-pointer sort of bounce off the rim in the closing seconds. And the next day you have the Ocean City girls almost in the same exact situation. They're down 10 points to Pascack Valley. They come back and see a three-pointer bounce off the rim in the closing seconds. And I think when you look at those games, even though they were losses, those games and the second half comebacks that the St. Augustine boys and the Ocean City girls, nearly pulled off, just show how much heart and desire and really almost say as much about who those teams are as a 20-point win would have. So although everybody wants to win the state tournament game, and obviously they would trade it for a win, I think when you look at those games as an X-ray of those team souls, and you just saw the heart and courage and sort of grit and determination that those two teams had, and see why Ocean City won 30 games and St. Augustine won 27, 28 games this season.
Checking in right now with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Mike, is it a situation where maybe was South Jersey basketball as a whole a little bit down this year, or was it just sort of an anomaly there where, so many South Jersey teams got to state finals but weren't able to get over the top, and obviously one has nothing to do with another one. It just was coincidence that nobody in South Jersey won a state crown.
Well, maybe it's a little of both. I think when you look at it, you've got to, you can't ignore the results of state championship weekend, and maybe you look at it and say, okay, the teams from North Jersey are maybe a little bit ahead of the teams from South Jersey right now. And, there's probably no denying that. You just look at the results of that weekend. At the same point, you look at the teams from South Jersey. Woodbury gets there, Camden gets there, St. Augustine gets there. The Ocean City girls get there. So you see teams get there, and they play a lot of close games. And if a shot goes down, a shot here, a shot there, Camden could have won, St. Augustine could have won, Ocean City could have won, and you're looking at 3 state champions instead of none. So the truth is probably somewhere in between. Yeah, the North Jersey teams are maybe a little bit ahead of South Jersey right now, but for a lack of a shot here, South Jersey could have easily had 3 or 4 state champions. So can't panic, too much. It's probably a combination of both, and I'm sure that South Jersey will be back in the Tournament of Champions next season.
I want to dissect the season a little bit more. We'll start on the boys' side, and we talked about the St. Augustines of the world and some of the other squads outside the Cal, Woodbury and Camden, but some really good seasons from some Cape Atlantic League teams that certainly made the playoffs but didn't get all the way to that sectional final or obviously the state final. And one of the teams that jumps out for me is a mainland. You're talking about 22 wins and a core group of seniors there, and eventually just sort of ran into a buzzsaw against a Winslow Township team in the South Jersey Group 3 semifinals, a three-time defending champion Winslow Township team, as that Eagle squad went on to win another South Jersey title. But what did you see from Mainland this year? And that's a team, as you know, that certainly basketball-wise doesn't really have a lot of history of success, at least in recent years, but they really set the bar going forward.
Yeah, well, when you look at Mainland, you have one of the best stories of the year in Ashun Asuni. The 6'9", 6'10" center comes out. Really, kind of people knew who he was around the Cape Atlantic League, but he really came out with a breakout year this season. Averaged 6 blocks a game, double-figure rebounds. He had a couple of triple-doubles early in the season, points, rebounds, and block shots, and really kind of established himself as one of South Jersey's top players. And nobody before the season would have said, hey, would have picked him as being one of those guys. Here's a guy who went into high school, was 6'1" in high school, didn't even start on his freshman team, stayed with the program, grew 8-9 inches, and now has turned himself into a legitimate college prospect. So, that's a great story when you look at Mainland right there. And Dan Williams does a great job, and they were able to win 22 games. And like you said, they ran into a hot Winslow team in the South Jersey Group 3 final, but I don't think there's anybody at Mainland who doesn't look at this season and mark it down as a complete success for what they achieved.
Atlantic City, interesting this year, Mike, 21-7. And again, the Vikings, they play a really tough schedule, but, coming off of the year they had last season, South Jersey champs over Cherokee, and they go into Cherokee again and just, never really in that game. I think they were shut out in the first quarter. But I guess the positive to this, or the silver lining, if you will, they return so many key players next season. The expectations for AC next year, in your eyes, coming off of this season, what should those expectations be?
Well, I think they're high, and they're high every year for Atlantic City, whether they return key guys like they will next year, and Ray Bethea, Nazim Morderi, and Flash Morgan, as well as David Akins. They have those 4 guys back. Expectations are always going to be high at Atlantic City, whether they bring back 4 guys like that or they bring back nobody. That's the nature of Atlantic City basketball. I think what finally caught up with Atlantic City this year is so many times they've been able to go on the road and win on the road in the quarterfinals, on the road in the semifinals, and then win that championship game on the road. Remember, last season they won at top-seeded Washington Township and then went to Cherokee and won the South Jersey title game at Cherokee. I just think it caught up to them this year. You're not going to go on the road consistently and run the table in South Jersey Group 4. And I think, when they didn't have their best, first half against Cherokee, it kind of cost them a little bit. So I think Atlantic City brings back a lot of those players. But I think if you look at Atlantic City, I would expect them to have some emphasis, in those first 16 games to start the season and try to get 1 or 2 or 3 games at home, rather than having to constantly go on the road and win 2 or 3 road games, which they've done in the past, but, eventually caught up with them this season.
Checking in with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City as we continue to break down the high school basketball season that was here in South Jersey and especially in the Cape Atlantic League. Mike, Wildwood Catholic, that's an interesting study this year as well. Again, always high expectations, but once you get to those non-public B playoffs, what can you really get out of the Crusaders? A little bit of a slow start, then they really turned it on. They won the United Conference. They beat St. Joe twice, and then they did win a game in the non-public B playoffs. So is that a successful season for a program like Wildwood Catholic?
Yeah, I think they had a successful season this year. I think if you ask them, though, they would probably want, a couple more wins during the regular season. Wildwood Catholic plays a very tough schedule. It seems like every Saturday they're at one of these showcase events playing a top team, and they got some big wins this season. They beat Camden Catholic. They beat CBA. I think they lost to Toms River North in overtime. But I think, if you sat the Wildwood Catholic people down, they would probably say, hey, we'd like, 1 or 2, more wins in the regular season. And the South Jersey non-public B playoffs are tough for them. Those are the best teams in the country, basically. The Roselle Catholics, the Gill St. Bernards, the Patrick School. Those are top teams in the country. But I think if you're Wildwood Catholic, they would say, hey, we'd like a couple more wins in the regular season and and maybe instead of losing in the Cape Atlantic League semifinal to Atlantic City, a game Atlantic City pretty much controlled, I think they would have liked to have gotten to that final and played St. Augustine again and see what happens there. But again, you talk about the people Atlantic City has back. Wildwood Catholic has some outstanding players back. Caleb Fields is one of the top players in the league, and Taj Feet, the 6'5" freshman, kind of established himself as a player to watch in South Jersey. So it's kind of exciting for Wildwood Catholic what they have come back, and maybe they can use the experience of this season, build on it, and be even better next year.
So we know St. Augustine will reload, Atlantic City, Wildwood Catholic, some of those teams we talked about. But, Mike, who are the teams that you would expect to get back in the mix in terms of Cape Atlantic League playoff berths, and maybe some teams that got there this year but higher expectations next year? I know the teams for me that jump out, a young Middle Township team, maybe a team like a Holy Spirit too, which had a little bit of an up and down year, still finished with 15 wins, but they have a lot of guys returning. And then a Millville team, which really, you don't want to say came out of nowhere, but there were some tough recent years in Millville, but now they have a guy in Rynell Lawrence who's only going to be a junior next year. They made the Cal playoffs this year, so you would expect bigger things out of the Thunderbolts next year as well.
Yeah, you hit the three teams right there, and I think there's a lot of talent coming back. You look at Middle Township, they were hot towards the end of the season. Jalen Freeman really kind of emerged as a top player as a sophomore. Anthony Farmer kind of got his feet under him as his first year as head coach, replacing Tom Farraco. And I think towards the end of the regular season, they won 8 of 9 games, lost a tough playoff game to Overbrook. I think Holy Spirit is a team definitely to watch next year. They've got a lot of guys back. Drew Gallagher back, Reese Miller back. They have some big guys that were freshmen this year that kind of showed a lot of potential. So I think Holy Spirit's a really intriguing team. I think, like you said, Rynell Lawrence, he's a guy a lot of people in South Jersey might not know about, but he's one of the most exciting young guards in all of South Jersey. And then there's a lot of other talent back. Josh Wright is back at Cape May Tech. Pat Holden's back at Lower Cape May. So I think there's a lot of talent coming back to the Cape Atlantic League next season.
Mike, I know that you guys released your Press of Atlantic City Girls Basketball All-Stars. Have the Boys Basketball All-Stars been released yet, or is that tomorrow?
That will be tomorrow, and it'll be online today. I'll give you a little spoiler. Justin Mutz is going to be our Player of the Year, and then the rest of the team flows from there. Justin really had an outstanding season for St. Augustine and really an outstanding career. And so he'll be our Boys Player of the Year, but all that stuff, the Team of the Year, the Coach of the Year, will all be at pressofac.com later today and, in the newspaper tomorrow, where it looks best in the newspaper. It's a nice layout and everything else. So invest in the newspaper. You guys do it right. Before we let you go, last quick question. Who you got NCAA champion? Please tell me you're not picking USC. I'm not picking USC, though. That was an exciting win they had yesterday. I am, however, going with another Pac-12 team. I like Arizona. I really like Sean Miller as a coach. I like their team, and I like what they've done, although they could be in trouble today against that St. Mary team. But I like Arizona. And I'll give you a little upset tip here. I think Villanova might be in a little trouble tonight in their game. So I think that's something to watch Saturday night. All right, you heard it here first. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Always appreciate the time. Great catching up, and we'll talk to you soon. Hey, Mike, anytime. Thanks a lot. All right, again, Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City. Pick up the newspaper tomorrow.